Okay, and next we have schedules. Now we need to understand what is the difference between a questionnaire and a schedule. Please understand what happens in a questionnaire. In a questionnaire, the researcher actually gives away the questionnaire to the respondent. The respondent will go through the various questions in the questionnaire and then he'll fill up his response on his own. And that is why in a questionnaire you need to have a respondent who is literate. An illiterate respondent would not be able to answer a question. In schedule, however, what happens is the researcher has a chat with the respondent, and he poses all the questions which are there in the question, which are there in the schedule, one by one to the respondent. The respondent listens to the questions and then he answers the questions. The answers are noted down by the researcher. So this is the basic difference between the schedule and the questionnaire. Please understand that the schedule can also be used with people who are illiterates. This is not possible with a questionnaire. Next type of surveys are mail surveys. Now what do we mean by mail surveys? Very simple. The questionnaire is sent across to the respondent on his email ID. The respondent receives the questionnaire, he goes through it, and if he feels like, he would answer the question and send the responses back to the researcher. So this is how mail surveys are conducted. But generally in mail surveys the response rate is very low. It is almost around 2%, which means if you are sending across 100 mails, you are likely to get a response only from 2 of your receivers or 2 of your respondents. The rest are not going to even bother answering your mail. So that is one problem with the mail surveys. Earlier we used to have these kind of surveys and the questionnaire used to be sent by post, but now since we have emails, now we have mail surveys, and the questionnaire is not sent through post but it is sent through electronic mail. Okay, now that we have understood the different types of surveys that can be there, now let us do a comparative analysis of all these types. So let us do a comparison. Now we will be comparing on basically four criteria. We'll be doing the comparison on four bases. Number one is, you have a look at this table, you will find out the first column refers to the different types of surveys that are there, which we have discussed just now. The first column, if you look at the heading, time, labor and cost. So basically the first basis on which we'll be making the comparisons is how much time, labor and cost will be spent on that particular type of survey, whether the survey type is time, labor or cost efficient or not. The second criteria for the comparison would be demonstration. Is it possible for you to provide visual cues, to show pictures to your respondent while you are posing the questions to him or her? Now why do we need this? Let us assume we are conducting a research wherein we are trying to find out which particular design of a shirt does the customer prefer. There are, let's say, 5 designs and we want to find out from the customer which designs does he prefer, or we want him to rate his preference for all these 5 designs. Design A, I don't like. Design B, yes, I like it the most. This way. So if I want this, if I want him to give me his preference rating for 5 different designs, don't you think I'll have to show him the designs? Basically when I show him the design, or basically when I show him the design depicted in form of a picture, I am presenting to him some visual cues, I am making some demonstrations to him. And at times you might require this also. You might need to demonstrate something to provide some visual cues to your respondent also. For example, if I am, let us say, researching the various shades of different colors, which shade is the most preferred by the customer? If I want to find that out, don't you think I'll have to show him the different shades? Then only he'll tell me, okay, I like this shade and I don't like this one. So basically, at times you may have to provide visual cues to your research to your respondent also. So the second criteria is whether it is possible for you to provide him visual cues or to demonstrate something to him while you are asking the questions. The third criteria would be the response rate. How likely is the respondent to go through your questionnaire and answer all the questions which are there in the questionnaire? Or how likely is he to turn down your request and tell you that, boss, I'm not free, or I would not be able to complete this questionnaire, or maybe leave the questionnaire only half filled? So that is the meaning of response rate. Yes, we would want to go for that particular type of survey wherein the response rates are high. We are not turned down by the respondent. They agree to answer our questions, and not only that, they answer the questions in toto, in full. They don't leave the questionnaire only half filled. That is what we want. So response rate is going to be third criteria on which we'll be comparing the various surveys. And the fourth criteria is whether that particular type of survey allows us to obtain some sensitive information from the respondent. Now, what do we mean by sensitive information? Basically, sensitive information is something which he generally may or may not, which he generally may not want to share with you. For example, information regarding the income. Generally, people are not very cool with sharing this information with others, how much they earn actually. And you might have found this out in your uh, interaction with so many people also. Many times, women are not very okay with sharing the information regarding their age. So these could be termed as sensitive pieces of information. Then there could be another other pieces of sensitive information also. For example, if I want to find out from somebody whether he has broken any traffic law, naturally he would not be ready to give me an honest answer, right? If I'm asking whether he has deliberately broken some traffic law, would he be forthcoming with the answer? He may not be very forthcoming with his answer. So this is again an example of a sensitive piece of information. Now again, let's assume that I'm asking somebody uh, some questions. I'm probing him on his sexual preferences, a very sensitive piece of information the respondent may not want to answer. So the fourth criteria that we are taking is whether it is easy for me to obtain sensitive information from the respondent when I'm using that particular survey type. So these four will be the criteria. And now I would only give you the general rules. Based on that, you do what? You try to, I'll give you the general rules, and you, based on that, you try to guess on your own whether a particular type of survey is providing me a particular type of functionality. What I mean to say is whether a particular type of survey scores better than the other types on a particular criteria. So you try and do it on your own and cross check your responses with the information given on this particular table. Okay, so now let me take the first criteria: time, labor and cost. How much time, cost and labor is going to be spent on a particular survey type? Please understand, if you are going for face-to-face interaction, if you are going to the respondents place of residence, naturally it is going to cost you more time, and it is going to be costlier for you also, and you would require more number of people helping you out also. On the other hand, if you are doing it from a central location using a telephone, or maybe automated surveys, or maybe you are sending across mails, which we call the mail surveys, in such cases it would be easier also for you. It would be less costly, it would be more efficient in terms of the manpower that you require, and it would also be much less expensive. So this is the broad rule. Now you try and find out which survey methods would score over others, would be better than others on this particular criteria, and try and match your answers with the responses, with the information given in the table. Just one clarification I'll give to you, uh, that in market intercepts, I'll give you an example. In market intercepts, since you do not have to go to the place of residence of the respondent, you are intercepting him when he is in the market. That means you have to station yourself in the market, so naturally it is going to cost you much less than door to door surveys. Is this fine? So you can now do the you can now process this information on your own and try and match your responses to the information given in this particular column. So can you do it on your own? Kindly attempt on your own. In case you come across any problem, you can pose this query to me. Now, as far as the demonstration or visual cues are concerned, see, would it be possible for you to demonstrate something, to show your respondent a picture on telephone? At least not on telephone. Mobile phone at least you can do, but not on telephone. Would it be possible for you to do it when you are going for computer assisted telephonic interviewing? Not possible. Would it be possible for you to do it when you are sending across emails? Possible at times. You can send across pictures on the email also. But yes, when you are interacting with somebody face to face, yes, you can provide him demonstration, you can provide him visual cues, and you can demonstrate some particular item to him before asking a particular question regarding that particular item. So that you can do when you are interacting with the respondent face to face. So this is the general rule. Now try and find out on your own and match your responses with the information given in this particular table. Now response rate. See, response rates are generally higher when you have a face to face interaction with somebody, because once you are meeting somebody face to face, then that person will feel more obligated to respond to your request. But if you are calling up somebody on telephone, or maybe you are sending across a mail, the respondent may not feel obligated to answer your questions or to answer your questionnaire, and he may not respond. So the general rule is, if it is a face to face interaction, the chances of response rates being higher, there are chances that the response rates would be higher. On the other hand, if it is not involving any face to face interaction, and both the parties don't know each other, the chances are that the response rates would be lower. Now there's just one thing which you'll have to keep in mind as far as response rates are concerned. Executive interviewing, so when you interview the executives, actually it's a face to face kind of a situation wherein you are interviewing the executive, but here the response rates are likely to be lower. Why is that the case? This is because executives are generally busy people, so it would be difficult for them to find time out from their busy schedule to respond to your questionnaire. And that is why there is an exception as far as executive interviewing is concerned. Though there is a face to face interaction, though the two parties are interacting with each other directly, even after that the response rates are likely to be lower. Is this okay? Now we are moving on to the fourth criteria. Again, now this is the exact opposite of response rate here. See, please understand, if there is face to face interaction, the respondent is less likely to disclose sensitive information. Please understand. On the other hand, if there is no face to face interaction between the researcher and the respondent, the chances, the likelihood of the respondent answering even the sensitive questions is much higher. And that is why, in case you want to ask a sensitive question, which particular type of survey would you prefer? Would you want to go for a mail survey, or would you want to go for a face to face interview? You would want to go for a mail survey, because there the respondent and the researchers are not interacting with each other as such, they do not know each other, and that is why the respondent will feel comfortable coming out with truthful responses. You understand the point? So in case you want to obtain some sensitive information, go for telephonic interviewing. You can go for computer assisted telephonic interviewing. You can go for direct computer interviewing also, and mail surveys also. Fine. Now the task for you is to first you need to write down the general rules that I have talked about as far as all these four criteria are concerned, and based on that try and find out which surveys are better on which particular criteria and which surveys don't score over others, they are not as good as others on that particular criteria. And then what you do is, whatever your guesses are, then you try and cross check whether you have guessed correctly, and try to match your guesses, match your responses with the information given here in this particular table. So would you be able to do this now? Kindly do, and then you can always discuss it with your friends also. In case you still feel it's a little confusing, I will be more than happy to answer your queries. Now let us move over to a slightly different type of a survey, which is called an in-depth interview, in-depth interviews, or in-depth interviewing. As the name suggests, what do we mean by in-depth? In-depth means you are trying to gather very rich information, and that is what is the job of in-depth interviews. Let us have a look. Unstructured interviews on a particular theme. These are unstructured interviews, but they are on a particular theme. For example, if I want to find out why customers look for a mobile service provider which promises them a very fast network speed, I want to find this out. Why people are very much interested in the internet speed when they are making a decision regarding which particular mobile service provider to go for. I may want to conduct an in-depth interview. In-depth interview I might want to conduct. And what would be the central theme? The central theme would be, I need to find out why people prefer those mobile service providers which promise them very fast internet speed, very high internet speed. Is this okay? So this would be the central theme. But the interview would be unstructured. Now let us understand what is the difference between a structured interview and an unstructured interview. And we have discussed this in HR also. A structured interview means there's a lot of structure in the interview. The number of questions is same for every interview. So if you're conducting the interview with three different respondents, say different respondents, say A, B, and C, the number of questions posed to all the three respondents would be same. The sequence would also be the same. Even the responses, the response categories or the options that we are providing them, they would also be the same. So the number of questions is same questions, same number of questions, and same sequence. That is the meaning of an unstructured interview. On the other hand, in-depth interviews would be unstructured. How many questions I pose to respondent A may be different from how many questions I pose to respondent B. What is the sequence of questions? That may also be different for respondent A and respondent B. And what type of questions I'm asking, that may also be different. But please understand, I'm all the questions which I'm asking, they are actually revolving around the same theme. The theme is decided, but exactly how I phrase my question to different respondents will be very, very different, and that would actually depend on what answers is he giving me, what responses is he giving me, because that will give me an idea about what supplementary question to ask. So do you understand what happens in an in-depth interview? It's absolutely unstructured. What do we mean by this? The number of questions would be different, the questions that are asked would be different, and the sequence would also be different for different respondents. But yes, please understand that the questions that I'll pose to him will be revolving around the same theme. So this theme would be same for all the three respondents. I'm trying to, taking the same example, I'm trying to find out why people prefer a mobile service provider with higher speed. So this is the main theme that would remain the same, but exactly what question I pose what is the sequence of different questions that I pose, and what is the number of questions that I pose would may be different for different respondents. Is this understood? So can you tell me, if you are an interviewer, where would you require a higher skill level, if you are conducting a structured interview or if you are conducting an unstructured interview? You can pause the video here and think for a while. Where would you require greater skills, when you are conducting a structured interview or unstructured interview? A structured interview, same sequence, same number of questions. You already have a questionnaire with you and you are asking the same question, same sequence, same type of question. So you don't have to change you don't have to change your questions according to the response of the respondent. While in unstructured interview, you have to change your supplementary questions depending on the response that has been given by the respondent. So naturally, you require greater skills as an interviewer or as a researcher when you are conducting unstructured interviews. Is this fine? Okay. Again, another characteristics is it's a one-to-one interview. One respondent and one interviewer, or one field worker or one researcher. Then no particular sequence of questions. We have already discussed this. There is no particular sequence of questions, and respondents' answers provide cues for supplementary questions. So if I ask question number 1, depending on what has been the response of the respondent, I would pose question 2. If the response is different for different respondents, naturally question number 2 would be slightly different for different respondents. Open-ended questions are asked. Please understand now what do we mean by open-ended questions. We'll be discussing it later on also, but you need to understand right now. Open-ended questions are questions which do not have a definitive answer. I'll give an example. If I ask you, which of the following do you prefer? Books, A, books, B, WhatsApp, and C, Facebook. Suppose this is a question that I pose to you. Now please understand, there are definitive answers. You can either say A or B or C. You can either say A, books, B, WhatsApp, and C, Facebook. That is all you can say. Or should I add one more option, D, Tinder? So you will have to give a response out of these 4, A, B, C, D: books, WhatsApp, Facebook, and Tinder. But if I pose this question in a slightly different manner, I ask you, which thing do you like to do when you are free? And I don't give any option. You can give me any answer you may like. And for 5 different respondents, I may get 5 different answers. You understand? So the one which I discussed earlier was basically a closed-ended question because it had only 4 options, and all the respondents have to tick only one out of these 4 responses. So their response has to be from among these 4 options only. While in the open-ended question that I asked later on, what do you do in your free time, and I leave it absolutely blank for you to answer whatever you want to, then naturally there can be n number of different answers, and this one would become a open-ended question. So generally in unstructured in-depth interviews, we pose open-ended questions. We generally don't give them options, and that is why responses for different respondents can be very different, and that is why my supplementary questions would again be very different for different respondents. You understand the point? Now, what is the aim, what is the objective of in-depth interviews? Please understand: to probe deeper and unearth hidden feelings or motivations. I want to probe deeper, I want to go deeper and find out what are the hidden feelings about which respondent himself is not very much aware. So I'll keep on asking him, probing him further, trying to find out why basically he's looking for a fast speed. Somebody can tell me, because okay, I am here in Pithoragarh and my parents are staying there in Jhulagarh, and I'm very much worried about their well-being. So if I have a fast internet connection, I can always go for a video call. So that could be the reason. So I'm trying to find out what is the underlying cause for a particular product choice. Is this fine? In this case, he went for, my respondent is going for a mobile service provider which is providing him faster access to internet, and that is what I am looking for. So he's going for that particular service provider because he wants to remain connected with his friends who are there in maybe Jhulaghat. So he wants to remain connected, and that is why he's choosing that particular service provider. So I'm trying to find out those underlying feelings, underlying hidden motivations. Now, how do we analyze in-depth interviews? Please understand. Now, this is one very important aspect about in-depth interviews. We don't only analyze the verbal responses, but also analyze the non-verbal cues, non-verbal feedbacks. What was the body language while he was answering my question? What was his posture? What was the pitch of the voice? Was it a raised pitch? Okay. Or was it an average pitch, like I'm talking right now? So, what was the difference in the voice pitch? What were his gestures and what were they conveying? So I look at the non-verbal feedback also to make an assessment of what he's saying and what hidden feelings or hidden motivations are there that are propelling him to go for a particular mobile service provider, the example that we had taken. So we are looking for non-verbal feedback also. Generally, it is used in exploratory research design. I've told you in-depth interviews are really going to be time consuming. They may take maybe 1 hour, and you need an expert interviewer also, because not only you have to keep on posing supplementary questions, but also, and it is very important, you also have to make an assessment of what the respondent is saying, not only based on his verbal response but also based on his body language and gesture and posture. So these interviews are going to be really time consuming, and naturally you cannot conduct it with 1000, 2000, 3000 people. You only can conduct them with maybe 10 or 20 or 50 people at most, and generally they are using exploratory research designs. Fine, because they are time, cost and labor intensive. We have discussed that. Now let us talk about, we have had a look at different types of surveys which are there, and we also had a look at the in-depth interviews. Now if we have to decide which particular survey we are going to use, now this is the thing for which we are going through all these concepts. You have to actually determine which particular type are you going to use for your research, for collecting the data for your research. So let us understand what are the factors based on which you are going to make this decision. Number one, if the budget is small, you don't have that much money, so you are going to go for which ones? You are going to go for those ones which are less time, cost and labor intensive, which require less time, which are less expensive, and which require less number of field workers. And we have discussed that, for example, telephonic interviewing or email interviews, email surveys are going to be a good choice in such a case. If you have a small budget, you don't have too much money. Second, need to expose respondents to various stimuli. If you want to expose your respondents to various stimuli, we have talked about one stimuli, the visual stimuli. You remember the example that we had discussed a little while ago, wherein you had to show 5 different shades of color to a respondent. Likewise, suppose I want to find out from my uh, respondent as to which taste does he prefer the most. Supposing I'm trying to bring a new brand of chips into the market, and I am trying to find out which taste is more preferred by the customer. There are, let's say, 3 different tastes that I have thought of. One is the pudina flavor, the other one is, let's say, I'm just giving you an example, dhania flavor, and the third one is, let's say, the uh, chatpata flavor. And I'm trying to test and trying to find out from my respondent which ones does he prefer. Don't you think I will have to make my respondent taste these flavors? So this is a cue that I need to provide to him, because then only you would be able to give me a response, a stimuli that I need to provide to him. Now you have to find out which types of surveys are going to be more useful in such a case. Naturally you cannot go for telephonic. How are you going to make him taste three different flavors on telephone? Would you be able to do that? On email, would you be able to do that? No. But yes, door to door market intercepts, you can always do that. Also, of course, in schedules. Now, third is the degree of structure in the questionnaire. What do we mean by degree of structure in the question? We have already seen same questions, same sequence, and same type of questions means highly structured questionnaire. If the degree of structure is low, you can go for door to door surveys. On the other hand, if the degree of structure is high, you can send emails, you can conduct the interview on telephone, and you don't need a human being to conduct the interview. You can always conduct this through automated systems, through pre-recorded human voices also. So that you can do if the degree of structure is very very high. Fourth, length of questionnaire. Length of questionnaire, if the question is lengthy, the respondent may not answer all the questions. The response rate is likely to be lower, and that is why if the length of questionnaire is a little too much, then what you'll have to do is you'll have to go for those modes wherein there is a face-to-face interaction between the respondent and the researcher, because now the respondent will feel obligated to complete the survey, to complete the questionnaire, to provide answer to all the questions in the questionnaire. But on telephone, he may not. So if you are having a questionnaire which has maybe 25-30 questions, never conduct it on a telephone, because he may hang up midway. He say no, no, I'm tired, and he would not feel obligated to answer all your questions because there is no face to face interaction between you two. On the other hand, if you go for a face to face interview, if you go for executive interviewing, if you go for, let's say, market intercepts, or if you're going for schedule, then there is a face to face interaction. Respondent feels obligated to answer all your questions, and that is why, in case the questionnaire is too lengthy, then you go for direct interaction modes wherein there is a direct interaction. Don't opt for telephonic interviews, mail surveys, or maybe computer assisted surveys. Never go for them. Types of questions asked. Again, we have discussed this already. If private sensitive information is sought, never go for direct interaction modes. We have already discussed it. Go for modes like telephonic survey, go for mail surveys, go for computer based interviewing wherein the questionnaire was getting displayed on the computer screen. The respondent comes and enters his responses and leaves. There's no interaction, there is no other person sitting or standing nearby. So you can go for these kind of modes to obtain private information from the respondent. If there's a high risk for the field staff, for example, I want to, let us say, conduct interviews in, let's say, Chandak area, which is in the close vicinity of a forest, and I want to conduct these interview at 7 p.m. in the evening because this is a requirement of my research. Do you think it is going to be a good idea to go and conduct face-to-face interviews? Don't you think we should go for telephonic interviews then? So whenever there are such risks for the field workers, go for telephonic interviewing or mail interviews. Okay. Now the last one is the incidence rate. Now what do we mean by the incidence rate? Please understand, it has been written proportion of population of interest in overall population. In overall population, what is the population of interest? What is the percentage of population of interest? Now what is the population of interest? Suppose I want to conduct a survey among females in Pithoragarh in the age group of 10 to 70 years. Okay, here the incidence rates are very high because I can very easily spot out of maybe every 100 people that I go to, at least 40 to 50 would be females in this particular age group, 10 to 70. But on the other hand, if I want to conduct a survey among females in Pithoragarh who are above 100 years in age, who have already completed, who have already seen one full century of their life, they are above 100 years of age, don't you think the incidence rates are going to be very, very low? Out of 100 people, I might get maybe one or two, and even that may be a very optimistic estimate. I don't think even we would get one or two such females here in Pithoragarh who are living beyond 100 years. So in this case, the incident rates are low. For example, if I want to find out, if I want to okay, I'll pose a question to you now. So there are you'll have to tell me where the incidence rates are going to be higher. One, number of people who own a scooty, and if I want to conduct another survey among people who own a Mercedes in the whole of the country. So you are conducting a survey in the whole of the country, wherein you want to talk to only those who own a scooty, and on the other hand, another researcher is conducting again in the whole of the country, where he only wants to talk to people who are owners of a Mercedes. Where are the incidence rates going to be higher? Incidence rates are going to be higher in case of the former, wherein we are talking to people who own a scooty. You understand this point? Clear? So that is the difference between incidence rates. Is this understood? And what do we mean by population of interest? The population with which I want to do my research, the people from whom I want to get a response to my questions. For example, if I'm in the example that we had just taken, if I want to conduct a survey with people who own a scooty, so population of interest is all those who own a scooty. If I want to conduct my survey with all those people who hate their teachers, so the population of interest might be students like you who hate their teachers. So you understand the meaning of population of interest. If I want to conduct a survey with people who do not use WhatsApp, so my population of interest is people who do not at all use WhatsApp. Is this okay? So do you understand the difference between the high and low incidence rates and what is the meaning of population interest? Okay, so now just to check your understanding, give me an answer to my question. Where do you think incidence rates are going to be higher? Researcher 1 tries to survey people who are not at all using WhatsApp, and researcher B tries to obtain data from people who use WhatsApp. Where are the incidence rates going to be higher? Naturally, in the later case, where we are talking of those people who are using WhatsApp. Fine. So naturally, if the incidence rates are low, don't go for door to door or face to face. Out of 100, you are only going to get one respondent of your interest, so it hardly makes it a good choice to go for 100 households and then finding out just one respondent. It would be a better idea to go for telephonic interviewing to control your overall costs. Is this fine? So that is all for the day. We have discussed different types of survey. Now the next thing that we'll be discussing in the next video lectures would be observations and experiments, but I understand that probably it is a little too much for you, so I'm ending the session here. Kindly go through every single thing that we've discussed in this session. Do keep preparing your own notes, and we'll very soon be having a test also. And in case you come across, again I'm repeating the same thing, in case you come across any queries, any problems, or you have any queries, you can always discuss it among your friends. This is the first thing that you need to do, and if it does not get resolved at that stage, you can always contact me. Thank you very much, and I hope you have enjoyed the video session today. Thank you.